And we are live. Welcome back to the latest version of A Beer and a Beverage. We have an absolute legend in sci-fi, Alan L. Wold. How are you doing, Alan?
I am doing extremely well, all things considered. And there are a lot of things to consider.
Book and a beverage. Do you have a book and or beverage that you'd like to mention?
Well, beverages. Let's take that one first because it's shorter.
Okay.
I don't have, well, I do. In the morning, my beverage is strong coffee with heavy cream and a sweetener. Lots of caffeine. All right. During the day, it's Diet Coke because I watch the sugar, not because I'm diabetic, but just they add calories. I like, with the right friends and the right time and the right place, I like single malt Scotch whiskey. There's a couple that I prefer. And the thing I would drink if I didn't have to worry about being more substantial than I am would be chocolate milk, as a matter of fact. Doesn't go with Scotch still, but I like that. I have some in the refrigerator for special occasions.
Nice.
Yeah.
And books. I'm assuming you've read a few.
I have no idea how many there are, but I've probably read several thousand books. And one of the things I was going to talk about, didn't mean to block out the camera like that, are the books that I'm reading right now. And I read books 3 at a time at the moment. Pick up one, read it, and then I put it down, pick up another one. And this one, The Lego Story, is not a fan book, but it's a history of the company written by the guy who wrote a history of Hans Christian Andersen and Astrid Lindgren. If you don't know who that is, there was a series of children's books called Pippi Longstockings. My wife read them, but I didn't. But this is a real history. He had access to the family archives. And so this is what really happened and the real people who were involved. Okay. Another book that I'm reading now is one of Japan's bestsellers, translated in English, called Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. And it really is 2 long novellas, alternating chapters, and it's very strange. People of Japan either think he's absolutely wonderful or they would like to burn him alive, depending upon their taste. Because it's not like Japanese literature at all. It's his own stuff. And very weird. And then just because I like to read lots of nonfiction, there'll be, I can't focus on the camera, Body in Question by Jonathan Miller. My wife has seen the TV show. I think I may have too, but you can see I'm partway through it. Reading the book right now, and I just switch back and forth from one to another as I want to. So those are the books that I'm reading right now. I don't read a lot of... Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I don't read a lot of science fiction and fantasy because they interfere with my current projects. If I read a book and it really catches my attention, I discover that I haven't written anything for 6 days. I read slowly. If it's not a book that I'm going to appreciate, then I put it down after 10 pages and give it away. The catching my attention, I have 2 examples of that. One is, there we go. The Witcher.
Yep.
Pronounce his name. They based a video game on him, a computer game on him. He's one of Poland's best-selling authors, and I've started the first one. And 3 books later, I had to quit because I needed to do some of my own writing. A similar thing happened with somebody else who is an entirely different kind of writer altogether, and he is a successful self-published writer, and that's Stuart Jaffe. Mm-hmm. And he writes a totally different style, different format, different plotting, different characters, but it catches my attention and it holds it. And I read 7 of them in a row before I had forced myself to put them down, so that I could I could. Oh, The Witcher is a great series. Yes, so I could get back to doing what I'm doing. And then just because I need Bald&Balding, I'll let you know if you block me again. Don't block him again. Uh,
So,
make me around instead. My two most recent books. This is currently my favorite, A Thing
okay.
Forgotten, and it's on that little picture you gave of me. I
Yeah.
like this book a lot. I could read the blurb, but I won't unless you ask for it. And another one, which is my most recent book, is Turning Point, and you can almost see the starship inside his protective bubble as it's going it's flickering through galaxies and having a wonderful time. So, oh, yeah, but okay. My daughter did both covers. She is a part-time author. I did the picture of the starship, and for A Thing Forgotten, I chose the picture from it's a free to use picture, and Darcy did all the work on it, making it look as neat as it does. So my daughter does almost all of my art, my covers, including all the Black Ring and the Dead Hand and the Sturges, and she didn't do the V books. The publisher did that, and I don't like them.
So, when did Turning Point come out?
Turning Point came out. I think it was late last year. I have to look up on the. See, I write very slowly, and it's copyrighted 2023, so that's relatively recent. And it's the hero is born at the beginning, and at the end, his first child is born, and everything in the middle is what you have to read to find out. I can give you the blurb. You want a blurb?
Sure. Tell us about it.
Okay. I have to have my light on here. Kastari is the name of the people. A few Kastari are traders in their home cluster and in that part of the galaxy where the markets are. Only those who have the education, training, and hands-on experience have a chance, and even then, only a few can earn the license. Some of the Kastari mine the cold stars for strange molecules, which they use to create bizarre materials, and some of those molecules actually do exist, which they trade or use for building starships. Most Kastari provide everything else that is needed in a mining town in their artificial city between the stars, because that's what they are. They're miners, and they have to have a big thing. Oh, I love your comment show. Okay. None of the people with whom the Kastari trade are human, and some are so strange as to be almost incomprehensible. If traders are to succeed, they need an expert in extracultural relations who can advise them when bargaining with these peoples. Varian is a trader. His life mate is his advisor. Together they are better than most, though there are sometimes problems which test them to their limits. There's no villains in this one. It's all
Interesting.
about being who they are.
Interesting.
I hope you mean that. Buy the book and you find out.
No, the idea that you're going to write a book and not have a bad guy, I mean, that sounds interesting to me.
There's people who are bad guys, but they're not villains. They get into a situation where visiting one of the worlds where they're trading with, and there's a war going on. So
Right.
that's it. But there's no bad guys. Doesn't have to be. The hero grows up. He learns what he has to do. I thought he was going to be the most important character. He's just the captain of the trading ship. The most important carrier is Aventi, who he eventually become life mates because she's the strong person in the story. I didn't know that. I'm so excited when I discover things about my characters that I didn't know in advance. And when she began to be the person who's actually doing stuff, I thought, okay, I'll just let her go. And I switched chapters back and forth. And, that was really a pleasure for me to discover and to write.
Okay, so my first question I have for you is, when did you get started in writing? And I'll warn you, it probably was before a couple people in the audience were born.
Back in the old days, and I really were old, I wasn't. I discovered an old Royal portable typewriter in the back closet, which still had enough ink on the ribbon that I could make letters with it. And at that time, we didn't have a lot of typing paper in the house. Matter of fact, we had some scraps that from work that my dad did. He was a professional commercial artist, so he had some paper and he gave me a piece. And I put it in the typewriter, and I still remember that very first, I was 8 years old, very first story. Once there was a detective who thought it was a simple, quite thing, but it wasn't. It took me longer to write that, type that out than it would have to write it. That's it. I've progressed a bit since then, but I do remember that first story. Yeah, so I actually started writing when I was about 8 years old and doing all kinds of things, but never writing actual fiction. I just wrote stuff.
Right. So you're lifelong. You've been a writer for your whole life.
For my whole life. One important event was I was in high school in southern Arizona, and I had a dream that I had inherited somehow or another come into $96 million. Why that number, I don't know. And of course, being a late teenager, I would think, what am I going to do with all this money? And I wasn't interested in houses and cars and stuff like that. I didn't have good ideas. After a while, I realized that every single fantasy I had about that money always ended with, and then I would have time to write. So when I was a junior in high school, I knew that that was my calling. That was what I was going to do with the rest of my life when I wasn't earning a living. Well, I'm not earning a living now. Actually, I am. My living is household management and domestic engineering. But that's when I knew I was going to be a writer, and I still am. But I realized it's not that I'm a writer, it's I'm a storyteller, because other people can write all kinds of stuff, and I don't write textbooks. I did write a textbook, as a matter of fact. And I don't write much nonfiction. I've written a couple. And, people offer jobs if you want to be a writer for this company doing stuff. But that's not telling stories. And I tell stories. That's what I do. And so when I use the word story, it may be as short as 800 words or maybe as long as 750,000 words, which is called The Black Ring, and it's available on Amazon if you have the right URLs. All 6 volumes of it.
Nice.
Yes.
So EL says storytellers come in all shapes, but comes to us young. I think I'm the exception to that. I didn't start writing till I was 46.
Oh, okay. But that does sometimes happen too. I know other people who didn't discover what they were going to do until they were in their 30s or 40s, because they've been so busy being what their parents wanted them to be and what their teachers wanted them to be and what their bosses wanted them to be. And it was sometime it came up that, you know what I really want to do? I really want to run a bookstore. So what they do is get a job in the bookstore and then take it over when they can. But that's what they want to do. I know people who run bookstores because that's what they want to do.
Yep. So what was your first book that you wrote?
The first book I wrote was The Planet Masters.
Okay.
That is my title. I'd have to take a look somewhere here for a list of the books because I don't remember them all in order. It was The Planet Masters, and it came to me as an inspiration. Oh, I'd always in response to the person who spoke up there or typed up there, telling stories, even telling them to yourself. Always, and they always involve 2 or 3 or 4 characters, and always there's something going on between them. And sometimes they're nice things, and sometimes they're not nice things, but there's always problems to be solved. And only those that are worth turning into a written story survive. So I have lots of those all the time. But yeah, I started writing, and it came to me as an inspiration walking across UNC Chapel Hill campus, and I realized, oh, I've got a story here. Yes, true, very true. And I went through it terraforming.
Is that what the Planet Masters is
Not
about?
really terraforming. No, Planet Masters meant he was the well. Oh, come on! It's available. Go to Amazon and buy a copy and find out for yourself. I know somebody who was in the Navy, and when he went to the submarine, that was one of the books he took with him. The Planet Masters means the master of the planet, not the forming of the planet. And he wanted to get out from under his father's thumb. His father was wealthy, and he was a remittance man, and he found a place. If he could find this artifact, he would be so rich he could just kiss his father goodbye, or maybe just shove him out the window. And he finds out what it is, only he doesn't realize that it's a thing that's been lost for thousands of years, and the person who owns it now rules the planet. That's what they have to do.
Awesome.
It's like, you come over here and conquer England. Now what do? You stop being a conqueror, start being a manager. Stop being start running things instead of having fun. So he didn't know that was what was going to happen. Now I've spoiled it for you. No, I haven't.
No.
It's a good story. This is stellar.
So you told me this story at MarsCon, but I figure people might enjoy it.
Okay.
So tell us about those wonderful books that are your personal favorites, those books you wrote in the V series.
My agent called and said, the V TV show wants to have some books for the regular weekly series of the same characters in similar situations. And I said, well, I'm not sure about that. And at that time, my wife's stipend was $2,800 a year, and they were offering me $7,500 for a book. When you're hungry, you say, I'll take the money. Really. And we lived very thin. We still, so I took it, and a friend of mine had videotaped both miniseries, and I watched them over a weekend, over and over and over again, thinking, oh, this is awful. Oh, this is ghastly. The weekly series was even worse. And I just can't stand it. But there's 3 times Diane's stipend in that for me, even with the agent's commission. So I wrote a book, and I based it on, it was like a TV script. It was an imitation of a TV script with different characters and different cutting scenes, and the main characters weren't all that important. And so it reads like one of the episodes that you had watched on TV. And the fans of the TV series read it, and they thought that was good. V from the 80s. And people do love it. What I like is for me only, and what you like, if you loved it, go out and buy those 3 books. They're all secondhand only because I don't own them. And there was the Jewels. No, that was something else. There was the Pursuit of Diana, and the Crivet Experiment, and excuse me, just a minute. I can't remember the title of the third one. I have this problem. When you get to be my age, you'll have the same problem. The Crivet Experiment was based on, they gave us scripts, and it was a major part of going to be one of the episodes. When it finally was shown up, yeah, it did make a great shot. It was 30 seconds. The Crivet only appeared on it 30 seconds, but I made it to be the major problem to be solved. Below the Threshold was the third book, which I wrote thinking this show isn't going to last forever. So if I do a global search and replace, I can change it into a non-V book, only they just started doing things. And it turns out it's all right. It doesn't matter that it's not a V book, even though it pretends to be. And, it takes place in wherever we had that convention recently.
Virginia Beach.
Yeah, Virginia Beach. Not like that. And so I did that, and it turned out to be pretty well. People kind of liked it. They didn't buy 92,000 copies of it, but that's all right. 92,000 copies of a paperback at that time was officially a bestseller. So The Pursuit of Diana, I hate that title, was a bestseller. And it's not my fault. It's my responsibility, but it's the TV show. Oh, well, anyhow. Okay. I have to breathe out then.
So, and I warned you before we start that mine changes hourly, but what is your favorite book and or series?
I don't have a favorite.
I'm much the same way. I'm always like, I don't know. Let me think of one.
There's one that I really like a lot and can read it whenever I want to. Oh, don't write bestsellers, write good books instead. It's Double Star by Robert Heinlein. And I really like the characters. I really like what he did with them. I really like the situation, the difficulties, the problems they solved. Double Star. I really like that book a lot. But there are so many other really wonderful books out there. And I've got, 900 or 1,000 science fiction books in my collection. And I can't choose. I really like H.P. Lovecraft, for example. People say, well, he was an anti-Semite, but so is Henry Ford. Oh, he was a virulent anti-Semite. So we can't call them Ford cards anymore. So I have to call them something else. But Lovecraft didn't get into his stories. He wrote these strange scene settings, and he says there are books I am excited about and I can read again and again. And yeah, there are some of those that I read over and over again every now and then, but I couldn't tell you what they are right at the moment. I'd have to go looking for them, And but there are a few. But like I said at the beginning, I don't read a lot of science fiction or fantasy or whatever's in between, because either I like it so much, whether it's good or not my choice, that I lose track of the work I'm working with, or it doesn't satisfy what I'm looking for. So I put it aside. And again, there's no comment about how good it is or is not. It's just, it doesn't satisfy me.
Personal taste is different for everyone.
Okay, all right. Everybody else can read this, but I have to read slowly as well as I can. But someone would like to be, oh, yeah, well, no. That's where E.L. Montague and I are different. You are a writer that a lot of publishers would love to get to know, because if they give you an assignment to write this kind of a book and you really enjoy doing it, they will like it too. Whereas they gave me an assignment for a book and I hated it. It became a bestseller, but I still hated it. And I don't want to do what somebody else wants. I want to do what I want to do, which super critical. Yeah, that's fine. There's a lot of things wrong with science fiction and fantasy, a lot of things wrong. But I had my big epic heroic fantasy 6 volumes. Another book I had took the editors of 2 publishing companies 2 years to reject. And then the big Black Ring series, it's 3 years before they rejected it. And I was actually grateful, because it had happened to me with the Richard Braith stories that there was going to be a series of 10, but they canceled after the 3rd book. Well, what if they canceled the Black Ring? It's all one long story. It's like publishing only story 3 of The Lord of the Rings, which is the first story in volume 2. Right. You can't do that. Well, I decided I was going to have to figure out how to do it myself, and I've learned how, and I pay close attention, and I do publish my own books, and I've got to learn how to promote them a little bit better than this. But I do it my own, because at least now I have copies, or I can get copies, that if people are interested, they can read them. I think I have 17 fans, but maybe it's more like 23 by now. But and people, they buy a few books every year. You know how much money I made last year? My books, $327. There you go. So Montague is going in the right direction if he wants to be a professional writer, because knowing what the publisher wants is very important. One time I heard a publisher say, I only buy, editors say, only buy bestsellers. What does that mean? I bought 10 bestsellers, and I read the first few pages of each one, and I realized bestsellers are a genre too, like romances. They all have a similar structure, a similar idea for characters, a similar style of storytelling.
Yes.
If you put two together, you wouldn't notice that. But if you put 10 of them together in a period of a month, all of a sudden it becomes clear that there is a style, but it takes a writer to be able to discover what it is. So I don't care about bestsellers. I wouldn't mind if somebody bought 92,000 copies of any of my books, but I write them for me.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do. That's my calling.
Yeah.
If Mr. Montague decides, or I don't know if he's Mr. or not, because it may not be. I know
It's he. We call him El Montague.
El Montague. Okay, well that's good enough. He's the Montague.
There you go.
Hey, you know. And yes, that's right.
So this feeds into my next question for you: is when did you decide to go indie, and did you decide, or did the publishers decide that for you?
Well, I sort of told that story is when I realized that it was in my 60s. And I realized that if it was going to take 2 years for a book to be rejected, and it had to go through 4, 6, 8, 10 publishers before they bought one, 10 years, 10 publishers, 2 years a publisher, that's 20 years. I don't have time for that. So I did a very small book just to see if I could do it, called Cattails, the original title. And you might tell my sarcasm by tone of voice. And just 5 brief essays about my life with cats. And I discovered that I could, in fact, do it. And I keep it to give away to people. It's very, very small. And then I tried another title, and I tried another one. And learning how to format a book, learning how to copyright, to edit a book. I know how to edit a book. Some of the books I see that are published professionally have more typos in them than mine do, and they have they're not as well formatted to the pages as mine are, because I've just worked really hard to do a good job. But nobody's going to know it if they don't buy it. So everybody out there who's listening, you got to confirm for yourself that I know what I'm doing. Okay, all right. But that's when I started to do it by myself. And I do have, like I said, some people, some of them have been sold, and even the Black Ring of all 6 volumes, which cost the fan $125 to buy. And I was sending her the digital versions of the second edition that I was preparing, and she read them all, but she decided to buy the books for herself. And so that's a true fan. But, I don't have time to wait 2 years or 3 years for a rejection or for an acceptance. I just don't, I turned 80 last December, and however much time I have left, well, I'll come back in 10 years and tell you about it.
Awesome. So indulge me for just a minute.
Sure.
So I told you before we came on live that my all-time favorite author growing up was Isaac Asimov.
Yes.
And you actually met him, and he came to one of your parties. Is that correct?
That's correct. I did not know him, but back in those days, my wife and I would bring a box of soft drinks and snacks, and we'd invite people that we liked up to the room for a party. These days, I find 2 people that I like and offer them single malt Scotch whiskey, but that's more expensive. And so I was doing this. I was known to do this, and I could get people to come up, and they would have a party. They drink soft drinks and snacks, and if they wanted to bring a beer or whatever, they could do that. And Azimov came in one time, and he sat down in a big, you can't see, a big chair over there with 2 women who weren't his wife hanging on his arms beside his chair. And he sat there and just listened and watched and listened and watched. And Johnny Wirtz and somebody else were singing with a guitar in another room. And that's a writer I know. And he just sat there for about an hour, and then he got up and left. So that's all I know about him, really.
Okay. Janny Wirtz also. Wow. You can name drop some impressive people.
Well, back in the day, see, we were both beginners.
Yep.
I mean, Gordon Dixon was not a beginner at that time. And, there were others who weren't beginners. But Jenny hadn't been out doing it for very long. I met her again a couple of years ago, and for some reason or other, she remembered me. Maybe it's because I look weird. Anyhow, so we talked a little bit, but that was all there was to it. She's doing stuff still.
Yeah.
And I know a few artists, but I don't recall their names because my memory is like a sieve, broken sieve. There's larger holes too, and everything falls through. You were going to ask me about Haron Ellison.
Yes, that was my next question, because I know you said you didn't watch it, but I loved Babylon 5, probably my all-time favorite sci-fi series.
Well, if he was behind it, it probably was pretty damn good.
It was.
He's a superb writer. Although there were 2 stories of him in one issue, same issue of one magazine, and I could tell one he wrote it because he wanted to, and the other he wrote it because he needed the money. It showed. See, being a professional, you can tell the difference. But he was guest of honor at a convention, and on a Saturday, he read Paladin of the Lost Hour to the audience. And that night, Danny Kaye starred in the TV show of version of Paladin of the Lost Hour. And on Sunday, I was on a panel with him, and everybody else was going, I don't know, he's scary. But I was responding to what he said. He can't frighten me. What can he do? He can yell at me, and he has, and that's okay. Because finished up and everybody had left quickly. And he said, well, Alan, what did you think about Paladin of the Lost Hour? And he said, I just thought you did a wonderful reading. And he said, no, you schmuck, I mean the TV show. Harlan, your reading was better than Danny Kaye's performance. And he had nothing to say. Because it was better than Danny Kaye's performance. Listening to Haron Ellison read aloud is a joy. He knows how to do it. He knows how to do different voices without faking it. They're just a touch different. It's a wonderful reading.
Cool. So one of the friends, oh God, now I can't think of his name. I'm getting Andrew Meredith.
Across the internet, and you're getting it from me, see.
Andrew Meredith, he's a writer, and he also does audiobooks. But he had said that when he's writing, he loves Discworld by Terry Pratchett, but he absolutely cannot listen to it when he's writing, or else he tries to be funny and snarky when he's writing, and that's not him.
That's right.
And so you have that same problem?
No, I don't try to write like the writers I'm reading. I try to read the writers I'm reading, and then I stop writing altogether. I don't listen to music anymore when I'm writing because I don't have the right music. I certainly don't have television on or anything like that on. It's quiet. I get up in the morning, and I have until lunchtime for me, and nobody's supposed to say anything to me while I'm working. And when I get up, I say, I'm done. Then they can tell me all the things they want to tell me, or ask all the things they want me to do, which is all kinds of stuff. So I understand, though, if he was listening to Terry Pratchett, it would bleed over. Because when I'm reading a book, I get the character and I get inside the character. And that's one of the things I like about a Double Star was I was able to get inside that character. And almost become him for a while. And I love the way that story ended too. So,
okay. My next question is, what are you working on now, and when will we be able to buy it, me and my 89,999 friends?
I'm working now on something that is temporarily called The Empty House, and it may actually wind up being that. Turning Point started off being called Star Kings until I discovered that a much older science fiction writer had a book by that same title, and there was going to be confusion, so I had to change it. But The Empty House is appropriate. The idea behind it is, Lovecraft's gothic cosmic horror stories, the best of them from earlier in his career. Toward the end, he began to imitate himself a little bit. And The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, of whom Stephen King said, I heard him say it, she doesn't have to shout. That means she doesn't have to use fancy language. She just uses plain, ordinary, low-key language. And then he shut the door and the floor fell away. And the last he saw was the stars. I don't have to say anything more than that. Now, you get to the end of that story and you know what it's all about. But I don't have to say it's scary or it's frightening or it's grotesque or it's ugly. Shirley Jackson doesn't do that. She just describes it as it is and lets her characters react to the stuff the way it is. So The Empty House is what if H.P. Lovecraft's best cosmic horror gothic stories were written by Shirley Jackson. What if those stories were told low-key so that you could only feel them by the characters' reactions or by your only reactions to what is just simply shown? Well, he hung by the neck by his own intestines. Now, I don't have to say anything more than that. That's as grisly as you want to get. And that's the kind of thing. So, Mr. Stevenson, I agree 100%, except I'll never write a cookbook. Okay.
Alan, I have to interrupt. I have to apologize to people. My computer is acting up, and I did not see 1, 2, 3. There's 6 comments that just now appeared on my screen, so I'm behind. But
okay, The Empty House. Well, you hope it's empty when you go there. That's the whole point of the outhouse.
Oh, God.
Have you ever tried any of those? They are rough. That's my father used to talk about corn husks. React to H.P. Lovecraft, radioactive old. Love raft.
I think it's supposed to be Lovecraft.
You're telling bad puns over here. Just the kind I enjoy the most,
John is in the house, so yeah.
Yes, I am laughing out loud. So
don't encourage him. Well, okay, do encourage him.
Well, if we could sit down side by side or across the table at a convention, and I offered him a little bit of my Lafroig or a Lagavulin with a little bit of ice. Love Raft. Who's Love Raft? George Raft. You mean George Raft, of course. Or that's his sister. Okay. I heard something over there.
Oh, God.
Kind of like a voyeuristic love boat. Well, I'm sure that would be exciting for some people, but I don't need to be voyeuristic on a love boat. I have my own personal experiences to remember, and we'll not discuss that further.
So before we went off topic with about 8 comments,
yes.
What were we talking about? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember really. Something about
the book that you're working on now.
Book I'm working on now, yeah. It's 67 story chapters. Each chapter is almost an independent story. And in each chapter, I build up about the evil that has come back. And it just starts doing bad things to people. And people have different experiences of it. And eventually we get to the last 6 story chapters when the whole team has come together. This is based slightly on the tabletop game Call of Cthulhu, although it's not. The idea is that you have a team of investigators, but it takes 60 stories before they get together and 6 stories for them to finish the book off. And you get to see some of the horrible things that happen. The light came on so quickly that he didn't have time to scream. What's to say? Your
Awesome.
imagination will provide everything I can't do with words.
That's awesome. That's what I wish I did better, was because I'm always like, no, I have to describe it in minute detail, and then you're a paragraph in, you're like, no, that
No,
kills the narrative.
yeah. I learned about that in the most painful way. He has a family problem to deal with. Balding is doing something else right now. Sure. Uh, I a high school student was given the assignment of find somebody to help you learn how a job works, and she thought she wanted to be an editor. Turns out she isn't. So I said, okay, here is Strode's Cross. It's been rejected. It took 2 years to reject it and 2 years to reject it. And I know it needs work, so I'm going to let you take a look at it. And whatever you say, it can't be wrong because it needs a lot of help. And she came back a few weeks later and she said, I only could read the first 30 pages because there's just too much detail, 250,000 words. And you don't have to describe what the house looks like that detailed. And I looked through it and I thought, foo, she's right. And so I went through and I cut 75,000 words and made it a better story. But that's when it was made absolutely clear to not go overboard on details. Most of the times, readers can provide their own. You might say the living room had 2 sofas and an overstuffed chair and a TV in the corner, and that's all you really need to say because everybody knows a living room that looks like that or almost, and they can put what they know in there. If the color of the carpet was splotched by something black and sticky, I might have to mention the black and sticky, but that's because it's a part of the story. But the number of sofas doesn't matter. The number of loafers, maybe where the doors were make a difference because people come and go. So if he's standing in the middle of the living room and the door closes behind him, the reader has to not be surprised by that the way he is. YouTube thinks I'm a bot. Al Montague, I don't believe it. Some of your comments prove definitely that you don't have artificial intelligence.
I'm going to get that clip and I'm going to put it on Twitter for everybody to see.
You have room for your own imagination. There was a thing called Brazil, which was a movie made by it's a movie based on 1984, done by they had comics. They were TV comedians and Monty Python. And there's a scene there where, artificial or otherwise, whatever you like, it's fine with me. And there's a thing there where the interrogator comes into where the stenographer has been typing up what the person being interrogated has been saying. So you don't hear anything, you don't see anything, but she's typing, no, please. Oh, God, stop. No. Oh, please. No, don't. Oh, no. That's all you see. And you get to provide yourself what that was.
Yep.
And that's why I haven't watched the movie again. But yeah, it was. The Brazil was, and it's a well done movie. Animal Farm, I've read that, and I think he wasn't trying so hard to carry a message with him. 1984 has a point to it, but that's what he was trying to do, is make a point. 84 is come and gone. 94, 2004, 2013, Terry Gilliam, yes. 24. I wonder if people are going to write a book called 2024. Everyone can see and hear you. I'm in the show. I am? Okay. That's what a note down here says you're in the show. I don't know what that means.
So, want to ask you, when you go to write a new book, how do you approach it? Do you write an outline? Do you know what the ending is, or do you just sit down and type and see what happens?
Depending. Everyone is different.
Yep.
For Sturges, I wanted to write a vampire story that was not based on the movies, but went back to Bram Stoker. And I knew I had a vampire, and I knew that the hero did not believe in vampires, but it didn't make any difference because he was the one who's going to have to solve the problem. A couple of times he says, I don't believe in that stuff, but it doesn't matter. It happened, didn't it? And I didn't know what his background was until he revealed it to a police captain. And I knew that he couldn't do anything about it until he found out how to put down a vampire, and he couldn't find that out while he was alive. Once he learned how, he couldn't do it if he didn't have a body, so he couldn't do it while he was dead. So when he came back in somebody else's body, the only thing left was to get back into his own again. That's what I knew when I started. And when the story starts off, he teaches at a community college. He teaches reading, writing, and speaking, as it were, for people who want to get off the factory floor and know how to read a report or write a thing and know how to deal with people. And he notices as he's driving up that there were too many police cars in front of his apartment building. How does he know there are too many? Buy the book and find out.
And I'm the same as John here.
Okay.
I'm going to have to buy Sturges as soon as we're done here.
Sturges? I like Sturges. It's pretty well done, and it does end the way I want it to. I have an idea for the kind of endings that I want. I may have an idea for how a story starts. I don't know what the ending is going to be, but I know what it's about. I won't tell you the book this comes from, but the one is too many. One book, one story, one cop out of my door. Oh, yes. There were three marked cars and two unmarked cars and cops all over the place. You know why? There was a murder upstairs. That's what my hero figured out before he goes into the building. How does he know that? Buy it and find out. I know what the ending is about. The ending was, I threw away 100,000 words writing beginning after beginning after beginning until finally I said, what is the ending about? Oh, not what is it, but what it's about. The undying sorcerer gets his comeuppance. I can go anywhere with that, but I want to. So I started when she inherits the property, and it ends when the undying sorcerer gets his comeuppance. Oh, ho. So it's like that. In the Black Ring, all 6 volumes, 20 chapters in each volume. Some stories I had just an idea and went with it. Some stories, volume 2, I had all one story, and I just basically knew where it had to begin and where it had to end because there was going to be a volume 3 and where it was going to take place. So I put her in that world, and things happened and things happened and things happened. And she just, my character in the Black Ring is 23 years old, recently widowed, never been independent a day in her life. She's about 5 feet tall and maybe 98 pounds. She's called upon by power she doesn't understand to make a moral decision. Well, yeah, you can play hooky for rolling sushi. That's right. Make a moral decision which involved a human life. She makes the right decision and is given the Black Ring, which doesn't do anything except identifies her as the hero. She goes home. It's all over with, but she's called on again and again and again. And eventually she realizes it's not all over. It's not. I might as well go after the next problem on my own.
So
that's right, Mr. Montague or Mrs. Montague or who. You got a beard on you. Is that a disguise? It could be. It could be. I know some people who are like that, but I'm going to assume it's a guy.
So let's see. The tried and true question that you ask authors all the time: what's the best advice you ever got about writing?
Decide that you're willing to sacrifice lots of your life in order to do it. If you're not willing to give up the time, you're not willing to give up the money, not willing to give up all kinds of things like church and Saturday night football or all that kind of stuff, if you're not willing to do that, then you never get started, because you'll always be doing those things that are more important to you than writing. But if you realize that what you really want to do is write stories or poems or novels, even if you don't intend to publish, you have to decide that that's what you're going to do, at least for the first 2 hours every morning before everybody else gets up. Then you have a chance to make it. There are other things that go along with that, but without that, you're not going to get anywhere. Everything else you can learn or be taught, but not that. That's either you or you're doing something else. And you'll enjoy those other things better. I had someone come into my writer's workshop, and she said she didn't like to, it was just write a hook and then we will discuss it. And she said, I just don't really want to be writing stories. And I said, well, why are you doing this then? She said, my parents tell me I ought to. And I said, you just tell them that your instructor told you that you don't have to if you don't want to. And if you don't want to, anything you write won't be any good anyway, because you don't want to.
Yep.
And she heaved a sigh of relief and went home and told her parents, I guess. But that was important. You have to want to.
Yeah, I always tell people that write what you like, because you're going to end up reading it 73 times, so you better like it.
At least 73. Yeah. Because if you try to write stories that you don't like, they won't be any good. So, you say, well, I really ought to write romances. Well, I probably could right now, but they wouldn't be candlelight romances, I can tell you that much. There's a bit of a romance in The Empty House, in the Dead Hand. There's a bit of romance there, but that's okay. If you really enjoy reading romances, write, because you're already full of all kinds of stuff that will inform you when you sit down to work. You know what works and what doesn't. You know what books worked for you and which books you threw away. You already know a lot. All you need to do, oh, you're very welcome, sir. You already know an awful lot, and all you have to do is get some of the basic principles, which we don't have time. Well, I'll give it a try. First of all, you need to make the time. You need to have discipline. You need to have patience. And there's a couple of other things, but they're very simple things without which you cannot do well, which every writer needs: time, discipline, dedication, patience. There's a couple more that I turned into a speech once. But if you haven't got any time, what can you do? You have to make it.
Yep.
You have to learn the rules your way, not somebody else's way. Most books about writing are telling you their way of writing, but if you read books by known authors about how they wrote their books, you realize they're all different and they don't obey the rules. Somebody said, knows what the rules are and then break them like a pro. And that's a good idea, is to learn that, because there are some rules that you have to break in order to make the book work your way.
Yep. So we're going to take a break and let the peanut gallery speak, because I'm getting behind.
That avatar looks like me, Lego hair and all. Lego hair.
You were asking if El Montague, if he was male or female.
It looks exactly like you.
Lego hair and all.
I've seen you at conventions.
Then John being John.
Misgendering a bearded. I knew one once. I can't hear you, unfortunately. Heck no. Well, if you don't like romances, why are you writing the candlelights so fast?
Yeah, likes it, but
yeah, I know what you mean. So, like, I like Jane Austen, but I can't do that, And there's another one who writes romances, Regency romances, Georgette Heyer. Some of them, the main character is male, and some is female. I like some of them better than others. But I couldn't possibly write the books that she writes, and they're the only romances I read. So it's a name you can. He might be Father Wold. Maybe he has a white neck thing he's in with that Johnny Cash wardrobe. No! No, I don't have white neck thingies. I'm not a. Well, I am a father. I have a 38-year-old daughter. What? How did that happen? She doesn't fit on my lap anymore. Oh dear. Writing is digging to China with a spoon. Well, if you don't mind the pun, yeah.
And finally,
rules are there for a reason. That's true, absolutely. But if you're going to be any kind of an artist, you must know them so that you break them intelligently without anybody else noticing. And I've read books that have it. Well, I am. Okay. I've read books where Daniel Steele, for example, changed a viewpoint character in the middle of a paragraph. You're supposed to have a scene break before you change viewpoints. But she changed it in the middle of a paragraph. I could catch it because I knew what she was doing. And I thought, boy, I wish I could do it that well. But she knew what she was doing. Lonesome Dove. The author introduces a character, and the characters are talking, and the cowboy rides up, and he starts to get off his horse. 3 pages of background of the character before his boot hits the ground. You're not supposed to interrupt action with description, but he did it, and nobody cared because he did it right. So that's what it means by knowing the rules. That's right. Oh, well, I don't. Yeah, well, the writing teachers I took in college taught me nothing. I learned from the books that I read, other writers that I spoke to, and struggling to learn how to do it myself. It's not easy. It's not easy.
I always told people that I never even took English 101 or 102 in college. I did not ever grow up wanting to be a writer. I'm a chemist. And then at age 46, I said, I'm going to try this writing thing. And I mean, I did it, and who knew?
Yeah. Well, good enough. Sometimes, as a crazy guy in the streets once told me, genius recognizes itself. I would never look back down on my art, and I don't have a swelled head anymore. I have to do is read some of my older stuff, and that takes care of any swelling I might suffer from. Some of my books are. Mr. Stevenson, you're absolutely right. If it feels good, and it feels good for me, I'm supposed to be taking a break right now because I just finished 4 months working on this book, and I need to pause so I can go back and look at it fresh. But every morning I get there and I look at the chapter I stopped at and I want to go back to it, but I don't let myself. That's discipline, is to not write so that I can get a good perspective on what needs to be done, what needs to be tightened, what needs to be cut. Yes, I agree with that comment. Yes, absolutely, because they are storytellers, and that's why I decided to stop calling myself a writer, but a storyteller instead. I don't know how good I am at it. If but if somebody paid $125 for a 6-volume novel, why, I guess I do all right for some people.
Yeah, I would not turn that down in a heartbeat.
All right.
So the story you're writing now, is it sci-fi, fantasy? Is it Regency romance? What is it?
It's horror.
Horror.
Lovecraftian horror as told by Shirley Jackson.
Okay.
Sort of. The aliens are already here, but they've been put down. But somebody opened the gate, and they're coming out. And there are all kinds of other evils running around in the world. But these are the important ones. And that gate is somewhere in the empty house. And it has to be shut. And that's what my team is going to try to do. That's what my investigators are going to try to do. Whether they succeed or not, well, you'll have to buy the book to find out.
So
I'm on Amazon, but not all of my books are available easily on Amazon because you don't have the right URLs. I can give you the right URLs, but it's because I don't sell very many books.
So I was on a panel once with a guy who, like me, he writes first person present tense.
I've done that.
And he said that a person came up and goes, well, reading your book, I know the main character has to live because he's the one telling the story. And the guy just smiled and said, challenge accepted. He said, I've written 8 books now, and in 3 of the 8, the main character dies, but I'm not telling you which ones. Good luck to you.
Right. My daughter can write first person future tense.
Ooh.
James Tiptree Jr. could write Heinlein could write first person past tense. James Tiptree could write first person present tense. That's a very difficult thing to do. Anybody can pick up a guitar, and in a couple of weeks you can learn chords. Pick up a violin, and all you're going to do is make the neighbors complain. So doing things like that, they are very, very difficult. Okay, sounds cool. Well, if you tell him about it, and then so he can send a message to me, I'd like to know about it. Oh, don't call me Mr. Wold, please. You make me feel like I'm an old man. Oh my God, I am an old man. Oh hell. When we're at science fiction conventions, everybody is a peer.
Yeah.
You're 11 years old. Oh, when she took the writing class, she did wonderful things. Whether you're older than I am, there are 2 people older than I am at the last convention. 2. No matter what your economic background or your genetic background or your cultural background may be, when we get together to talk about creative fantasy writing, movies, and games, we all share that kind of a common interest, and we're all peers. I have had to tell people that. Don't call me Mr. Now, Hal Clement was going by Hal Clement. His name was Harry Clement Stubbs. Clement was his mother's last name. And I asked him once, what do they call you in the classroom? He said, Mr. Stubbs, sir. So if I'm talking to a classroom, Mr. Wold is fine. But in a conversation like this, we're not in the classroom. We're in one little tiny thing off the corner of a very small science fiction convention. At least it's science fiction as long as I'm here. I mean,
good old L. Montague has a great question.
When people told me they enjoyed my books, and one person once said, I read this book of yours and it changed my view of the world.
Oh, wow.
I've never heard that again. I don't even know who the reader was, but they said that to me. And I thought, okay, that means I'm doing something right. But I can't let that have anything to do with how I feel about myself, except to just accept it.
So I want to ask, when they told you that, how did you feel in the moment? Were you humbled? Were you like you take that back? It can't be true. What? How did you? How were
No,
you?
I was humbled because I wasn't aware that I had done anything that good. I didn't think it was that good when I read it, but I said something to that person. It's like the person who bought all 6 volumes of The Black Ring. I eventually found she has a YouTube, Facebook page, and I found out something about her. And she'd bought 2 volumes of the first edition, which had not been edited, had lousy covers. And I found out about it, got the books back, and started revising them. And she wanted to know where to buy the 3rd book, but wasn't available anymore. I told her what had happened, and I said, I'll just send her digital copies of the revisions as I finish them. So she had them all for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then she bought all 6 with the new covers and showed me a photograph of them.
Well, that's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And Herman has jokes.
Pardon?
Herman here, his comment.
My storytelling ability was developed explaining my bad grades. Oh, so sorry. Actually, no. What a wonderful way to learn how to tell stories.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe not a wonderful way, but
Definitely thrown into the deep end.
Doesn't it?
Oh, so let's see. That's my questions. Is there anything that you wanted to mention tonight that I didn't get to?
If we were sitting down and talking, we could probably go on for another hour at least.
At least,
especially if somebody else came in and sat down and we started passing things back and forth. See, you haven't been saying an awful lot. And in most conversations I'm in, I let the other person have answers too. For example, like discovering you're a chemist.
Yep.
You still have your job.
Yep.
Do you enjoy your job?
It pays the bills.
Okay. What kind of chemistry do you do?
Well, I
interviewed on your own program. Come on.
I used to be a chemist. Now I'm a formulator. I make lotions and sunscreens and shampoos and all that type of stuff. So I like it better in some ways because after I make something, the first thing I do is I rub it on my skin to feel how it feels.
And if it burns, don't sell it.
And and in the earlier days, I made stuff that if it saw water or air, it could explode. And so, I mean, I did some really dangerous stuff, but I was in my 20s and, I could never get hurt in my 20s. Yeah. So now that I'm much older, I'm like, you know what? I appreciate the fact that if I spill this on me, it just means my skin is extra moisturized.
And if it's taken up by a manufacturer and you can see it on the shelves, that must feel pretty good too, I would imagine.
So we're a supplier. So I make the formulations, and then our salespeople take it to Procter & Gamble and L'Oreal's of the world and say, "Here, look at our stuff. It's wonderful." So nothing that I make is on the shelf per se, but we sell a lot. My company. It's a German company, but they're as big as Dow or DuPont. So they're chemistry-wise, they're about as big as you get in the world. But no one's heard of Evonik because they're German.
Well, that's too bad. That's too bad. So anyhow, see, this is one of the things I do at conventions. Skullet cream.
The last show they wanted.
Okay.
Told me I should get a skullet. So, a mullet, but with the bald. So a skullet.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Ooh.
Hairstyles of the 70s are an abomination. I never did that.
Oh, in the 80s when the girls all had the bang thing that was, like 5 inches tall.
I knew a guy who had hair like that. And he had to get a real job. Now, he was father of 5, but he was a little bit different from most guys in some ways. But that's all right. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Bald with long hair. Well, I used to have long hair until the thong with which I tied it in back, there wasn't enough for it to stay in place, and it kept on falling off my head. And I find it on the sidewalk. I find it in the back seat of the car. I find it in all kinds of places. But I used to have a not very long ponytail, sort of. Pony, very, very thin. It got thinner and thinner and thinner, just like up here. I still have I still have 3 hairs left up here. So my daughter likes to pluck them out every now and then just to get my goat.
So I tell people once my hair was, for me, very long. It was, like that long. And I was like, man, I got to cut this. It's just getting too long. It's over my ears. So I got my trimmer out. I trimmed it all. I was like, man, I got rid of so much hair. And I picked it up out of the sink and it all fit in the palm of my hand. And I'm like, that is just so sad.
Well, yeah. But do you shave your head?
No, nature did that for me.
No, because bald men who shave their head cut off all the little tiny hairs that are still there, which is why they're chrome domes. You're not a chrome dome. You're kind of shiny. You're not a chrome dome. My mother's uncle was a chrome dome. So I don't shave my head either. All those little tiny hairs and other marks and spots looking like a fae. Hey, yeah, I wouldn't mind looking like a fae. I know what they look like. They're in one of my books. That fae is good. F-A-E is good, or F-A-E-Y is good. That's another good word for it. But fairy, you have to be careful with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Alan, what other Comic-Cons are you going to go to this year?
Okay, let me get out my calendar. I have a high-tech calendar here. It doesn't need batteries. I'll be going to Raven Con at the end of April.
I'll be there.
Well, we'll talk some more then. Or at least I'll talk some more and you can listen. Let's see. There's something called Retcon in March. It's in Durham. It's a very small convention. It's their 3rd year, but it's very lively with lots of interesting conversations. And then the last thing I'll be going to will be Congregate, which is in July, if I can turn the pages here. Congregate in July, and that's in High Point, I believe.
Yep.
Or Winston-Salem. Congregate. I'll be going to those conventions.
Okay, well, I will see you in RavenCon.
Real good.
Yeah, highly recommend RavenCon. You've been there before, I'm guessing, many times. Awesome.
No, it's Congregate I'm one of the founders of. No, I've been to RavenCon ever since the beginning. Yeah. But I was one of the founders of Congregate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, I will see you at RavenCon. There'll be several other people I'm looking forward to seeing, and I'm going to recruit people to be on Bald&Balding while I'm there. So,
all right.
So let's see. Any parting wisdom that you didn't get to share you want to? Let's see. You gave us advice to new writers. I don't think I'm missing anything terribly.
Well, I have a belief of the 3 most important qualities that people can have: respect, courtesy, and kindness. If everybody had respect for each other, regardless, courtesy, no matter whether you like them or not, and kind to people who needed it, well, that would take care of a lot of stuff.
Okay, and I have one more question for you. At RavenCon, I would love to give you a copy of my book. Will you take it?
I will.
Awesome.
What I can promise to do is put it on. Oh, I should have a picture of what my chair looks like on the stack beside my chair, and I will read a few pages. If you capture me, I'm doomed. And if I think you're good enough to read a little bit later, I'll leave it on the stack. But if it's not my kind of book, then I'll let somebody else enjoy it.
And that's all I want. I always tell people, if you don't like it, just give it to somebody else. That's fine with me.
And my opinions have nothing to do with the actual quality of the book at all, because a lot of books that are really good sellers, I wouldn't read for anything. Clockwork Orange, for example. I wouldn't read that if you paid me for it. Ginger Man. No, critics and academics love Ginger Man, but he's I don't use the words here, a jerk several times over at the beginning, and there's no getting over it. He's the same kind of a jerk at the end. Married man cheating on his girlfriend, avoiding people to whom he owes money. Just And he's just nasty all the way through. They say, but it's a wonderful character description. I say, yeah, but if he comes to my house, I have a crowbar beside the door.
So I was at one author's conference, and the guy, he just gave us the first page of numerous books, and we'd read it and then go, okay, what do we think about this? And he gave us one and read it, and I was reading going, this is awful. I mean, the language is poor. I was like, there's nothing about this that I find redeeming at all. And he's like, what do we think? And other people spoke up and said, hate it. And the one woman's like, well, I started reading it, but it was bad. It was 50 Shades of Grey was the book. And there's not a person in the room who thought after reading the first page that it was good. They're like, this has editing issues. I mean, how do you have editing issues on the first page? And it was eye-opening to me because, they made a movie out of that. The guy made so much money off that book.
Because it's mild pornography.
Yeah, and it was just dreadful. And that was one of the best classes I ever took because, they had literary fiction, which is not my cup of tea. I was like, there's nothing wrong with the writing, but it's not for me. And it was just nice to see, different styles and realize that everyone has their own voice.
Well, not editors, but critics and reviewers and academics hated Mickey Spillane, hated his work. He said, well, go ahead and hate it, but I sold 3 million copies so far.
Yeah. Yeah. I could live with that.
Yep. So I haven't had any desire to read. Somebody reviewed the movie and said, well, they left out all the good parts. Whatever that may happen to me.
So
we're running long, aren't we?
Yeah, we're a little long, so I'm going to let you go. I want to respect your time. We've been on it almost an hour and 17 minutes now. So
well, yeah, well, you see, I talk long, I write long, and perfectly.
But I will see you in April, sir.
All right.
And take care. I hope that you have your next book finished by then.
It won't be.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know too.
There is left to do. I can talk in detail about how I do that, but not right now. Okay. We need another hour.
Well, thank you for that, and have a good evening. And this has been really cool. And I'm going to take a couple clips and put it on Facebook, or not Facebook, on Twitter about El Montague and your comments you've made with him. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right. That's good. Okay.
And everyone, thanks for watching. And I almost forgot, if you like and subscribe. If you're still watching now, you probably already have, but I did remember. So I am the worst promotion.
Little stick it in front of your TV. It says, click the like button. Big letters. Red.
I'm going to have to.
Yeah.
Rose going to give me no end of grief about this, but I did remember.
Okay.
68 minutes in, but I remembered.
Okay. I'll see you then.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And we're ending stream.